If the emergency services has never complained about us, and the DTI claim they only act on complaints, obviously the complaints have got to come from somebody who's got a vested interest in removing us off the air. Now, you could say it could be a fellow unlicensed broadcaster, but they've got as much right to be there as we have. So obviously they're not going to do it. So who else has got a vested interest in getting us off the air? It then leads you to only one conclusion: it's the legal stations.
I know that Soul Nation don't really want to interfere with commercial radio and legal radio in the Manchester area, but they don't know everything, and they are assuring us that they will try not to. That's been quoted in the press and so on. But they don't know, they're trying not to. I know for a fact that recently we had problems with Soul Nation interfering with our signal. I find that a bad situation.
Well, we pay thousands of pounds a year to the Radio Authority for our licence to transmit. We pay thousands of pounds for the rental of the transmitter. We pay thousands of pounds to the Performing Rights Society, to the other copyright bodies. These people pay nothing. We have to observe all the health and safety regulations, and obviously we're paying rent and rates. We're a legitimate station, and I resent the competition from these people.
The legitimate licensed broadcasters naturally are concerned about the pirates, but for two reasons. Firstly, the pirates operate on frequencies near theirs, so any interference is usually picked up by the licensed broadcasters' listeners. In other words, they can't get the station that they want to tune to on the dial. Secondly, of course, the pirates are actually stealing the advertising revenue from the licensed stations, and that naturally causes some concern.
When we've gone off air after the raid, the advertisers only want to know one thing, like, are you coming back, and that's it. One guy who was nearly in tears, I mean, he started up a business, and his business was going down the tubes, and he's advertised with one of the local radio stations, and he says that he didn't get one bit of business. Whereas, like, he's advertised with us now, and he says that within the first week he's had phone calls and inquiries, and that's just within about 4 or 5 days.
We do a lot of research at Piccadilly and Q103. We interview thousands of people. They don't know it's us interviewing them. They tell us what they like to listen to, and there's no particular demand for other sorts of music. If there were, I'd be very open to people talking to us about it.
I was at the Radio Academy conference in 1990 in Glasgow, where the owner of a radio station stood up and said, when people call my radio station bland, I take that as a compliment. Now, when you've got that kind of thinking at high management level in legal radio, there's no wonder we have to have pirate stations.
These stations that say that they cater for the crowd and the listeners that Soul Nation are trying to cater for are basically run by white, middle-aged guys who haven't got a clue about what our style of music is about, and they don't really want to know. It's not a race thing, it's like, you know, it's a cultural thing. I mean, these guys are brought up with The Who and the Bay City Rollers and Mick Jagger and his lot. You know, what we're talking about is a world away from that, but they deem what type of music everybody else must listen to. Soul Nation.
Soul Nation. Soul Nation. After 4 months of silence, the Soul Nation team regroups and prepares for a relaunch.
Listen.
Hit it.
We are the boy.
You all know what's happened, right? And we've only got ourselves to blame. Hopefully, like me, everyone's learned the lesson.
The record companies have always had a slightly hypocritical attitude towards the pirate stations, actually. I mean, this has been the situation since the 60s, when you would have the head of EMI saying, no, we're not going to cooperate with these naughty stations, they're illegal, they're bad, they take away our revenue. And meanwhile, you know, their right-hand men, their salesmen are going round to the station saying, do you want 6 copies of this, 7 copies of that? And it's the same now with pirate radio. You know, they get white-label copies of pre-release records from all the major record companies ages before anybody else gets them.
It's one of those funny one-sided ones. only plays on one side, so special DJ one. Sony are very selective about who to send the stuff to anyway. Like stuff like the Fugees Killing Me Softly and all that. We had all the original promos sent out a few months back. It's easily going to chart. It's a massive track, but it's funny because at the end of the day, it's come to the end of its life on Soul Nation, and it's only just now going to start hitting the charts and all that. But I suppose we've done our job.
As an independent promotion company, a lot of major record companies come to us so that we can service the pirate stations. Pirate DJs are the most essential people I send records to, because I know people that are on the case are listening to pirate stations, and if you want to know what the next sound is coming from the underground, you're going to listen to pirate stations.
Just before the start of the Euro 96 soccer tournament, and in the space of a few hours, the DTI locates the major pirate stations in London, Bristol and Manchester and takes them off the air.
So hopefully just gives a call back.
This time, Soul Nation only loses the transmitter.
Okay, easy. I'm sick and tired of the DTI mithering me. Right, I know they've got a job to do, right? And I can respect the DTI in all of this. Where it gets annoying is where there are people who will turn around and say we don't matter to them, they're insignificant, but they're the people that are constantly on the phone. Get Soul Nation off air, please get them off air.
We have raids against pirate stations going on continually, over 600 in a year, and that's been the pattern for the last 3 or 4 years.
The Radio Authority has 3 main tasks. We license radio stations, we regulate those stations once they're broadcasting on the air, and we find frequencies for those radio services. The way the authority decides which areas it's going to add to its working list being a list of areas that it intends to advertise licenses in during the course of the year, is by the letters that it receives from people from all over the country. We get people who write to us and say they want to set up radio stations. We have been in the business of regulating and licensing stations for some time now, and we can tell who is serious about running a radio station and who isn't.
I think the common theme of legislation is that there is a right way to do it, and that is always very constricting. It's always based on some incredibly sort of narrow English conformist view of what is permissible.
There's got to be some kind of regulation like this. It can't continue with the jack of all trades type of stations that we've got at the moment, because that is why there is such an explosion across the country of pirates right now.
In London we have dance music, we have easy listening, we have jazz music, we have a station for the Asian community, a black community, Greek community and the Turkish community. And what we're trying to do is advertise more licenses outside London, which will broaden listener choice.
They talk about a lighter touch and they talk about deregulation, and it's really nothing of the kind. It's a kind of insidious re-regulation, and it still only lets a certain number of people into the club, you know, into the radio club.
The licence fee is not that expensive. A station covering 5,000 people is going to cost you less than £60 a year in licence fee to the Radio Authority. If you are operating a large Greater London station on FM, then you're talking about around £80,000.
Well, will pirates ever disappear? Some of them are fanatics, some of them exist because of the communities that they serve. I think that there's plenty of opportunities for pirates to go legal. There's the question of digital technology arriving in the not too distant future, which will be a problem for the pirates. And my view is that we will see less of the pirate problem in the years to come because of these 2 reasons.
And the whole emphasis seems to be on the fact that they should conform to the law. My view is change the bloody law, change the rules.